My grandson whispered, "Grandma, look under the table," at his father's wedding. I was sitting quietly at the table next to my 7-year-old grandson during my son's second wedding. Suddenly, the boy grabbed my hand tightly and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." Startled, I asked him, "What's wrong?" He trembled and replied, "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" I slowly lowered my gaze, and when I saw what was there, I froze. Without saying another word, I took my grandson's hand, and we both stood up in silence. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. I was sitting in the middle of the wedding hall, a grand ballroom glowing with candlelight, right next to my little grandson, the boy I love more than life itself. It was my son Alex's wedding day, his second marriage, this time to a woman named Ava. Little Leo sat beside me, pushing his red toy car back and forth across the pristine white tablecloth. His clear eyes were lost in a world of their own, far from the noise of the adults around him. Watching him made my heart soften. I reached out and gently straightened the tiny bow tie at his neck, a gesture that felt like touching a memory, the memory of his mother, Maria, whose tender smile I still remember as if it were yesterday. Soft jazz filled the air, blending with the quiet murmur of conversation and the clinking of wine glasses. The ballroom shimmered with luxury. Arrangements of white roses adorned every table, and candlelight flickered off gleaming silver plates. I looked around for Alex. He was moving from table to table, toasting guests with a radiant smile that tried to hide the emptiness I knew he still carried since Maria's passing. Across the room, Ava, his new bride, stood radiant in a beaded gown, posing for photos with her friends. Her smile was flawless, so perfect it seemed untouched by sorrow. I looked at her and felt something strange stir in my chest, a faint unease I tried to dismiss as me just being overly sensitive. Waiters glided between tables, refilling glasses, clearing plates, folding napkins. An elderly couple sitting beside us turned to me with kind smiles. "How fast Leo is growing! How old is he now, Betty?" one of them asked. I smiled softly. "He just turned 7. Time flies." I turned to cut him a small piece of cake. Leo looked up at me with grateful eyes, but quickly lowered his head again, continuing to push his toy car, as if that tiny world of wheels and color was the only place where he felt safe. Then, all of a sudden, Leo stopped. His little hands froze, and his round eyes fixed on me with a seriousness far beyond his years. A chill crept through me. He grabbed my hand, his fingers were ice cold, and whispered urgently, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." His voice shook as though he were trying to hold back a fear he couldn't name. My heart began to race. I leaned closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong, my boy? Tell me." Leo shuddered, his lips pressed tight. Then, barely audible, he whispered, "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" The word struck through me like a cold knife. An awful dread rose in my chest, choking me. I forced myself to stay calm, stroking his hair gently, but the sheer panic in his little eyes told me something was terribly wrong. "It's okay, my love. Let Grandma look," I said softly, pretending to sound calm, even though my heart was pounding. Carefully, I lifted the edge of the white tablecloth and peered into the dark space beneath the table, where the wooden legs of the chairs stood and Leo's small shoes dangled above the floor. And then I saw it. A small piece of paper, folded in 4, lay right beside Leo's chair. It was so small it could have gone unnoticed, almost swallowed by the shadows, but its presence froze my blood. Leo pressed himself against me, gripping my arm tight. His little chest rose and fell rapidly. Every tremor told me something was very wrong. I crouched down, trembling, and picked up the paper. The laughter and music around us continued, But in that moment, the world shrank to just me, Leo, and that slip of paper in my hand. I unfolded it. The candlelight flickered just enough for me to read the scribbled words, Table 8, add shrimp to the child serving. Just a few words, but they hit me like a blow to the heart. My blood turned to ice. Leo is deathly allergic to shrimp, something everyone in the family knows. A single bite could put his life in danger. Who could have written this? Who would be so cruel on my son's wedding day? I squeezed Leo's hand, feeling his small fingers trembling in mine. I stood abruptly, ignoring the curious glances of the guests. The elderly couple beside us stopped talking, their faces etched with concern. I pulled Leo into my arms, holding him tightly, terrified to let him go. Around me, the laughter and music played on, but to me, it all faded into heavy, suffocating silence. Memories flooded my mind, memories from the time when our family was whole, when I believed happiness would last forever. But life can be cruel, sweeping everything away like a sudden storm. I remembered Maria, my first daughter-in-law, as vividly as sunlight through a window at dawn. Her smile was warm, her voice gentle. She had that rare kind of kindness that brought peace just by being near. I could still see her in the small house she shared with Alex, Leo's laughter echoing in the backyard as he chased a rubber ball. Maria standing on the porch with a basket of fresh vegetables, her face glowing. "Mom, Betty, try the chili I made. Tell me what you think," she'd say proudly, placing a steaming bowl in front of me. I'd sit and chat with her about simple things while Leo crawled on the floor, clutching his old toy car. But the memory that haunts me most is the night Leo fell gravely ill. His fever burned high, his little body weak and trembling. Maria held him, tears streaming silently down her face. "Mom, Betty, I'm so scared," she whispered. I sat beside her all night, pressing cool cloths to his forehead, whispering, "Don't worry, honey, he's strong, he'll be okay." But inside, my heart was heavy with fear. Finally, at dawn, his fever broke. Leo fell asleep in Maria's arms, and she turned to me with red eyes and a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you, Mom. Without you, I don't know what I'd do." I just squeezed her hand, promising silently that I would always be there for her and for Leo. I believed our little family would be happy forever. But then came that terrible afternoon. The phone rang as I was washing dishes. The cold voice of a police officer came through the line. "Mrs. Williams, we regret to inform you." I never heard the rest. My hands shook so badly that the plate I was holding shattered on the floor. Maria was gone, killed instantly when a truck lost control and hit her car. Her funeral was on a day of relentless rain. It felt as though the sky itself was mourning. Leo, only 4 years old, clung to me, confused. "Grandma, where is Mommy?" he asked softly. I hugged him close, swallowing my tears. "Your Mommy's in a very beautiful place, my love," I whispered, though inside I was broken. Alex collapsed before the coffin, shoulders shaking. His eyes were hollow, a man shattered beyond repair. After that, he was never the same. He buried himself in work, leaving early, coming home late. I knew he was running from the emptiness, trying to drown his grief in routine. But Leo suffered most. He grew quiet, withdrawn. His eyes held the sadness of someone waiting for a miracle that would never come. I became his rock, taking him to school, tucking him in at night, telling him stories about his mother. "Grandma, tell me a story about Mommy," he would ask, and I'd tell him through tears, how Maria sang him to sleep, how she'd cut fruit into tiny pieces for his favorite dessert. Each story was a prayer, a way to keep her alive in both our hearts. Lucy, my adopted daughter, was a blessing during those years. She loved Leo like her own little brother, often bringing coloring books and cookies she baked herself. She'd sit for hours helping him draw, laughing gently when his clumsy lines ran off the page. Sometimes, though, I'd catch her looking at Alex with a quiet, deep affection that went beyond sisterly love. I saw it, but said nothing. I didn't want to disturb the fragile peace holding our family together. Time passed. Alex's home grew quieter, emptier, but thanks to Lucy and Leo, there was still a flicker of warmth left. Then came the day Alex brought someone new home. I remember it clearly. I was sitting in my living room listening to the sparrows outside, feeling both nervous and hopeful. He arrived later than usual, his eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Mom," he said, leaning against the doorway, "I want you to meet someone." "Someone special?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, a smile that reminded me of his youth. "Yes, you're going to like her very much." I nodded, wiping my hands on my apron, forcing away the growing unease in my chest. After Maria, I wasn't sure anyone could ever fill that void. Not for Alex, not for Leo, not even for me. That night, Ava appeared. She stepped into my home wearing a light blue dress, her hair styled in perfect waves that framed her face. Her lips curved in a soft red smile. Beautiful, practiced, and unreadable. That smile, I must admit, was charming, as if she had practiced it in front of a mirror to please anyone who saw it. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Williams," she said softly, bowing her head just slightly. I returned her smile, invited her inside, and offered her a cup of hot, aromatic coffee. "Your house is so cozy," Ava said warmly as her eyes wandered across the family photos on the wall. Her gaze paused on one particular picture, Maria holding a tiny Leo in her arms. I nodded and thanked her, but her eyes lingered on that photo longer than I liked. Something in that look unsettled me, though I couldn't quite say why. Dinner that night carried a friendly atmosphere, or at least I tried my best to make it one. I served the dishes I'd spent all afternoon preparing: tacos wrapped in corn tortillas, enchiladas with red sauce, and a fresh mango salad, Leo's favorite. Alex sat next to Ava, his eyes never leaving her. His happiness was written all over his face. "Mom," he said proudly, "Ava works in marketing at my company. She's amazing at what she does." Ava smiled and gracefully served me an enchilada. "Mrs. Williams, this is delicious. You must teach me how to make it," she said with that perfectly friendly tone. I smiled politely, but deep down, something about her voice, her laughter, her gestures, felt rehearsed. It was as if I was watching a very convincing performance. Leo sat at the head of the table, unusually quiet. Normally, he would be chattering away about school, but that night he just poked at his food, never once lifting his head. He seemed to be avoiding Ava's eyes, shrinking into himself as though trying to hide. Ava leaned toward him, reached into her purse, and pulled out a chocolate bar. With a radiant smile, she placed it in front of him. "This is for you, Leo. It's very good," she said sweetly, trying to win him over. But Leo didn't move. His little hands gripped his silverware tightly, and then he simply turned his face away. I caught a flash of fear in his eyes, and my heart sank. Alex frowned, about to scold him. "Leo, what's wrong with you? Ava's giving you candy." I quickly intervened. "It's nothing. He's probably just tired. Leave him be, son." Alex sighed and let it go, turning instead to pour Ava another glass of wine, as if trying to smooth over the awkwardness. Lucy, my adopted daughter, was also at dinner that night. She sat across from me, quiet but observant. When Ava took Alex's hand under the table, I noticed Lucy's fingers pause on her glass, tightening slightly. Her expression darkened just for a second. She said nothing, simply lowered her head and continued eating, but her silence weighed heavier than words. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I knew the moment wasn't right. After dinner, Ava insisted on washing the dishes, despite my polite refusals. "Mrs. Williams, let me. You rest," she said cheerfully. Reluctantly, I agreed. I watched her roll up her sleeves and hum a bright tune while she cleaned. Everything she touched, she did perfectly. The dishes stacked neatly, the sink gleaming. For a brief moment, I thought, Maybe this girl really is kind. But when I walked into the living room, I saw Leo coloring quietly. His little hands clutched a crayon. Ava approached him, crouched beside him, and praised him. "You draw so well, Leo. What's that? Let me see." Leo immediately dropped his crayon and leaned back, his expression wary, almost fearful. Ava glanced up at me, forcing a smile. "What a shy boy," she said lightly, but in her eyes something sharp flickered, something she tried to hide. Alex, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. He was laughing loudly, pouring more wine, telling work stories, and smiling whenever Ava giggled. The evening ended with my son completely smitten. As I stood in the doorway watching him see Ava off, his gaze fixed on her as though no one else existed, I couldn't shake the strange feeling growing inside me. Something about her didn't sit right. Time passed, and Ava gradually became part of our lives. One weekend morning, the bright California sun filled my living room as I sat knitting a scarf. Ava appeared suddenly, smiling ear to ear. "Mrs. Williams, I'd like to take Leo to the park today. Is that okay?" she asked brightly. I looked at Leo, sitting on the floor with his wooden blocks, his face blank and distant. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm sure he'd love it." Inside, though, I felt a tug of hesitation. Still, Alex was at work, and I thought maybe a little fresh air might help Leo. Ava took his hand and led him toward the door. I watched them go with a heaviness in my chest I couldn't explain. When they returned later that day, Ava came in beaming. "He had so much fun. He wouldn't stop going down the slide, and he even asked for another ice cream," she exclaimed cheerfully. But when I looked at Leo, I saw his shirt was dirty, stained with dried mud. His toy car was clutched in his small hand, and he said nothing. "Did you have fun, my boy?" I asked gently, crouching beside him. He nodded slightly without meeting my eyes. Before I could ask more, Ava's sweet voice cut in. "I already told you, Mrs. Williams. He loved it." I nodded again, but inside me, a tiny puzzle piece of doubt clicked into place. Another day, while Alex was at work, Ava dropped by unannounced. I was in the kitchen chopping onions for chili when I heard her voice from the living room. At first, it was soft. Then suddenly, her tone turned sharp. "Stay still, Leo. Don't make a mess. You're a big boy now. Stop acting like a baby." My knife stopped mid-air. A chill ran through me. I stepped out quietly. The moment Ava saw me, her tone changed instantly, honey-sweet once again. "Our Leo is so clever," she said brightly. "Look at the tall tower he built." Leo just pressed his lips together, his wide eyes turning toward me, pleading silently. I forced a smile. "Yes, he's very skilled," I said, though inside unease was taking root like a thorn digging deep. "Maybe she just doesn't know how to deal with children yet," I told myself. "She'll learn." Leo's 7th birthday is a memory I'll never forget. Lucy spent the entire morning baking his favorite chocolate cake. When she brought it out, candles lit, Leo's face lit up with joy for the first time in months. "Aunt Lucy, this is my favorite cake," he exclaimed, hugging her tightly. She smiled and stroked his hair. "I made it just for you, sweetheart. Eat lots." Watching them filled my heart with warmth. The family flame flickering alive again. Ava was there too, clapping politely from the corner with a weary smile. Her only gift to Leo was a half-hearted pat on the shoulder and a casual, "Happy birthday, champ." I saw Leo's little body shrink, his eyes avoiding hers. My heart ached. I wanted to say something, but I stayed quiet. "Don't interfere," I told myself. Another time, Alex took Ava and Leo to the grocery store. When they returned, Ava's tone was sharp again. "Leo dropped a whole bag of candy at the checkout and I had to pay for it." "What a clumsy boy," she complained. Alex frowned. "Leo, you're a big boy now. You have to be more careful." Leo lowered his head, twisting his hands together, his eyes darting toward me for comfort. I stepped in quickly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, my boy. It's just some candy." But inside, the questions kept growing. Why did she get angry so easily? Why couldn't she show him even a fraction of Maria's gentleness? One afternoon when I went to pick Leo up from school, his teacher pulled me aside. Her voice was quiet, concerned. "Mrs. Williams, lately Leo's been talking less. He seems withdrawn. Is everything okay at home?" I froze but tried to smile. "It's just the changes, Mrs. Davis. Don't worry." On the way home, Leo tugged at my blouse. His little voice trembled. "Grandma, I don't want to go home with Miss Ava." I stopped, kneeling to meet his eyes. "Why do you say that, my love? Miss Ava loves you," I said gently. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Leo shook his head firmly. "No, Grandma, she doesn't love me." I stroked his hair, trying to soothe him, but deep down, I knew he was right. Lucy, who had been walking a few steps behind us, had heard everything. She turned away silently, her shoulders trembling ever so slightly, as if holding back tears. All those small moments, all those warning signs, I had seen them, but I'd chosen to ignore them. And then came the day of my son's wedding. The golden Florida sun streamed through the ballroom windows, casting everything in a warm, radiant light. I sat at table 8 beside my grandson Leo and my adopted daughter Lucy. Leo was playing with his red toy car, murmuring a soft vroom, vroom under his breath. Lucy, in a simple beige dress, leaned toward him now and then, smiling tenderly. "Eat another little piece of bread, my boy," she said, breaking off a bit for him. Watching them filled me with a fragile sense of peace. Despite everything, their presence still warmed my soul. Alex, handsome in his navy blue suit, moved between tables, toasting guests, his face glowing with joy. That radiant smile seemed determined to erase the dark years after Maria's death. I looked at him with a mix of pride and sorrow. I wanted so much to believe that Ava would finally bring him happiness. But each time my eyes found her, laughing loudly, her wine glass never empty, posing perfectly for cameras, I felt that same thorn twisting in my heart. Her smile was too perfect, like a mask. The jazz band played softly. Guests laughed and chatted as waiters moved gracefully between tables, serving appetizers, crispy crackers, aromatic cheese dip, and elegant plates of shrimp. I noticed Leo quietly pushing the shrimp plate away and only nibbling a cracker. "Don't you like this, my love?" I whispered. He shook his head quickly, avoiding my eyes. Before I could ask more, a relative at the table leaned over cheerfully. "Oh, look at Leo. Such a well-behaved boy, Betty. How old is he now?" "He's a smart little man now," I smiled, hiding my worry. But inside, unease prickled again. Leo had never refused food so nervously before. Across the room, I caught Ava's eyes. For a brief second, her perfect smile tightened. Then she turned back, laughing as if nothing had happened. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. But then everything changed in an instant. Leo, still playing with his toy car, accidentally pushed it too hard. The little car rolled off the table and under it. He crouched down to retrieve it, then froze. His eyes widened. His face went pale. "Leo?" I whispered, leaning closer. "What is it, my love?" He didn't answer. Instead, with trembling hands, he pulled out a small piece of paper, folded neatly in 4. His lips quivered as he clutched my hand. Then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, he whispered, "Grandma, let's go. Please, let's go now." My heart began to pound so hard it felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. "What's wrong, my boy?" I asked, trying to stay calm, but Leo's terrified look made that impossible. Trembling, he whispered a question that chilled my blood. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His words cut through me like a cold knife. Slowly, I crouched down, lifted the white tablecloth, and scanned the dark space beneath the table. There, next to his chair, lay a small piece of folded paper, so harmless in appearance, yet brimming with menace. With trembling hands, I picked it up, feeling the world close in around me until all that existed was Leo, myself, and that damn note. I unfolded it. The candlelight was just bright enough for me to make out the scribbled words, Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving. Just a few words, but they hit me like an electric shock. My fingers crushed the paper as my mind spiraled. The laughter, the music, the clinking glasses, all of it faded, swallowed by a suffocating silence. Across the room, Ava, radiant in her wedding gown, was laughing and raising her glass in a toast, the picture of joy and confidence. Alex was busy taking photos with his coworkers, his smile so full of life that it twisted my stomach. But to me, the entire ballroom had become a stage, a glittering facade hiding something dark and vile. I clenched the paper in my fist until it burned against my skin. My grandson, the child I loved more than my own life, had almost become the victim of an evil scheme, right here, in the middle of his father's wedding. I turned to Lucy, my adopted daughter, who was sitting beside Leo. Her eyes widened when she saw my face. "Take care of Leo," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my efforts to steady it. She nodded, pulling him into her arms, shielding him like a mother bear protecting her cub. "Where are you going?" she asked softly, anxiety filling her voice. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I didn't even know what I would do next. My legs felt like lead, but my heart was pounding, urging me forward. Out in the hallway, I spotted a group of waiters laughing near the bar, their voices an unbearable contrast to the storm inside me. Among them was David, the young man who had served our table earlier. Normally, his face carried a gentle smile, but there was no room for kindness now. I marched straight up to him, thrust the paper in his face, and demanded, "Do you know who sent this?" David's expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. "My God," he stammered, "this is my note. A woman gave it to me. I dropped it when I was carrying the tray." His panic was real, but it only deepened my dread. "Who gave it to you?" I pressed, my voice rising. He stepped back, bewildered. "I don't know her name, ma'am. She just told me to give it to the chef. I didn't see who it was meant for." Rage exploded inside me like fire. "You have no idea," I hissed, stepping closer. "My grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. A single piece could kill him." David went white as a sheet. "Ma'am, I swear, I didn't know. I just followed instructions. I had no idea." His voice broke with fear, and the other waiters began to whisper, their curious glances bouncing between us. I clenched the paper so tightly my knuckles ached. Every instinct in me screamed to shout, to destroy, but I couldn't lose control. Not now. Leo needed me. From the ballroom, the MC's cheerful voice echoed, "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats for the main course." It felt like a cruel countdown. I had seconds, maybe less, before the trap would spring. I drew a deep breath, forcing my body to stop shaking. Silence would be my greatest sin. If I didn't act, I would never forgive myself. I re-entered the ballroom with the paper clutched tightly in my hand, proof of a sinister plan. Candlelight danced across the tables, the band played softly, and laughter filled the air, but all of it seemed grotesque now. Leo was huddled close to Lucy, his small hands trembling. His eyes met mine, full of fear. I took his hand, his tiny shaking hand, and felt a surge of strength rise in me. Then, without another thought, I stood up abruptly. My voice cut through the chatter and music like a blade. "One moment, please. Before we eat, I have something to say." The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward table 8. I could hear nothing but my own heartbeat. I raised the paper for all to see. "Who wrote this?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fury burning beneath it. "Who ordered shrimp to be added to the child's meal at this table?" A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. Confused faces turned to each other, whispering. Leo's wide eyes were fixed on me, pleading silently for safety. Alex hurried over, concern clouding his once joyful face. "Mom, what's going on?" "Read it," I said, pushing the paper toward him. He did, and his expression drained of all color. His hands shook. "What does this mean?" he muttered, looking between me and Leo, his voice cracking with disbelief. Before I could answer, Ava approached, her brows furrowed in perfect imitation of confusion. "What is all this?" she asked softly, her tone honeyed but her eyes sharp. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" I met her gaze head on, fury boiling beneath my skin. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice trembling but fierce. "This is not a joke. This is an attempt at murder." The words fell like thunder. Gasps spread through the crowd. Some guests stared at me, others at Ava. Ava let out a short, awkward laugh. "Mrs. Williams, really? There's no name on that paper. Are you going to believe something a child claims to have found?" Her mocking tone made several guests murmur uncertainly, some shaking their heads, others whispering, "Maybe it's just a misunderstanding." My blood boiled. How dare she stand there playing innocent? I was seconds from screaming when Lucy suddenly rose from her chair. "Enough, Ava." Her voice was calm, but cold, like ice cracking. Then, before anyone could react, she stepped forward and slapped Ava across the face. The sound echoed through the ballroom. Ava froze, one hand on her cheek, her eyes wide. Then quickly, she turned to Alex, her voice trembling in feigned despair. "You see? She's jealous. She's gone mad. I've done nothing wrong." Lucy didn't flinch. Her hands shook, but her voice was clear. "The only evil person here is you. You tried to harm an innocent child at your own wedding." A collective gasp swept through the room. Eyes began to turn, first to Lucy, then to Ava. The tension was electric. Alex stood still, his face torn between confusion and disbelief. "Lucy, stop," he murmured, though his voice wavered. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. The whispers among the guests grew louder. Every face turned toward us, toward Leo, toward me, toward Ava. Ava's voice rose, sharp and desperate. "This is slander. Someone planted that note to ruin our wedding." But her words quivered. The perfect mask was beginning to crack. Before anyone could speak again, a frail voice broke the tension. "It wasn't my sister Ava who gave the note," said Gloria, Ava's younger sister, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She asked me to give it to the waiter. I swear, I didn't know what it was." The ballroom erupted into murmurs of shock. "My God," someone whispered. "She wouldn't, would she?" Gloria's voice trembled as she continued. "I just did what she told me." Ava spun toward her sister, her face twisted with rage. "Shut up, Gloria! How dare you lie about your own sister?" But her lips trembled. The fury in her eyes was no longer the anger of innocence. It was the panic of someone exposed. Gloria stepped back, sobbing. "I'm not lying. You told me to give it to him." Her words struck like lightning, tearing through the ballroom. Guests gasped, some covering their mouths. Someone muttered, how could anyone do this to a child?" Lucy stepped forward again, still clutching Leo protectively. Her voice was cold and certain. "If you keep denying it, Ava, we can check the security cameras. It'll all be clear soon enough." Her words hit like a stone dropped into still water, rippling through the room, spreading panic. Ava's face went white. Her lips tightened. Her eyes darted around the ballroom, searching for an escape that didn't exist. My heart started pounding as if it wanted to jump out of my chest. "What's wrong, my boy?" I asked, trying to stay calm. But Leo's panicked look made it impossible. Trembling, he repeated the question that sent a chill down my spine. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His words cut through me like a cold knife. I crouched down, lifted the white tablecloth, and my eyes searched the dark space beneath the table. There it was, a small piece of paper lying next to his chair. Harmless at first glance, yet filled with menace. I picked it up with trembling hands, feeling the world shrink around me until all that existed was Leo, me, and that damned paper. I unfolded it. The candlelight was enough to read the scribbled words, Table 8, add shrimp to the child serving. Just a few words, but they jolted me like an electric shock. My hand crumpled the paper instinctively. Around me, music and laughter continued, yet it all felt like sinking into an abyss. Ava, radiant in her wedding gown, was laughing in a corner, glass raised for a toast, as if nothing in the world could touch her. Alex was busy taking photos with his co-workers, that bright smile on his face making it clear he believed this was the happiest day of his life. But to me, everything in that ballroom had turned into a farce, a glittering curtain hiding a terrible truth. I clenched the paper so tightly it felt as though it burned my skin. My grandson, Leo, the child I loved more than life itself, had almost become the victim of an evil plot on his own father's wedding day. I turned to Lucy, my adopted daughter, who was sitting beside Leo. Her eyes were full of concern when she saw my expression. "Take care of Leo, please," I whispered, trying to steady my voice, though it trembled with fear. Lucy nodded and pulled Leo close, wrapping her arms around him like a shield. "Where are you going?" she asked quietly, anguish lacing her tone. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I didn't even know what I would do next. My legs felt heavy as lead, but my heart pounded with urgency as I hurried into the hallway. Near the bar, a group of waiters were laughing together, their easy chatter a cruel contrast to the storm inside me. I spotted David, the young man who'd served our table earlier. He'd always seemed kind with a friendly smile, but right now none of that mattered. I walked straight up to him, thrust the paper toward his face, and demanded firmly, "Do you know who sent this?" David's face changed instantly. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock. "My God, this is my paper," he stammered. His hands shook as though he wanted to snatch it back. "A woman gave it to me. I dropped it by accident when I was carrying the tray." His words were both a light in the fog and another stab of fear. "Who gave it to you?" I pressed, almost shouting now. David took a step back, looking confused. I don't know her name, ma'am. She just told me to give it to the chef. The note didn't say who it was from." Rage flared inside me, hot and sharp. "You know my grandson is severely allergic to shrimp, don't you? One bite could kill him." David turned pale, eyes wide with horror. "Ma'am, I swear I didn't know. I just followed the note. I had no idea." His voice cracked, trembling with genuine fear. The other waiters whispered among themselves, glancing over in alarm. I squeezed the paper so hard it felt like it might burst into flames. I wanted to scream, to break everything around me, but I couldn't. I had to stay in control. Leo was waiting for me, and I had to protect him. From the ballroom came the cheerful voice of the MC, announcing that the main course was about to be served. His words hit me like a cruel reminder. Time was running out. I took a deep breath to steady myself. There was no time for hesitation. If I stayed silent, I would never forgive myself. I returned to the ballroom with the paper in hand, my proof of the sinister plan. Candlelight flickered across the tables. The jazz band played softly as laughter filled the air. The waiters began serving the main course, the aroma of roasted meat spreading through the hall. But to me, it all felt false. My eyes found Leo, huddled next to Lucy, his wide, frightened eyes locked onto mine, silently begging for reassurance. I took his trembling hand and, driven by something larger than myself, I stood up abruptly. "Excuse me, before we begin to eat," I said, my voice loud and firm above the chatter. "I have something to clarify." The room fell silent. Every gaze turned toward table 8. Lucy sat beside Leo, her eyes bright with determination. I held up the crumpled note. "Who wrote this? Who ordered shrimp to be added to the child serving at table 8? A wave of whispers rippled through the guests. Confusion and unease spread like wildfire. Alex came rushing over, smiling at first, but his face turned pale when he saw my expression. "Mom, what's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I placed the paper on the table and pushed it toward him. "Read it yourself." Alex read the note, and I saw his face drain of color. His hands shook. What does this mean?" he murmured, staring first at me, then at Leo. Ava approached, frowning in feigned confusion. "What is this? Some kind of sick joke?" she asked softly, but I caught the flicker of panic in her eyes. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said coldly. "This isn't a joke. This is an attempt at murder." Gasps rippled through the room. Some guests stared in disbelief. Others began to murmur, eyes darting toward Ava. Ava forced a brittle laugh. "Mrs. Williams, there's no name on the paper. Are you really believing a child's story?" she sneered, trying to make me look unhinged. The whispers grew. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding," someone muttered. "Who'd do something like that?" My blood boiled. Her audacity left me speechless for a moment. I wanted to tear that mask of innocence from her face, but I knew I had to stay composed for Leo's sake. Suddenly, Lucy stood up, holding Leo tightly. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. "That's enough, Ava." The slap echoed across the ballroom, a sharp, unmistakable sound that shattered the room's false calm. Ava staggered back, eyes wide, hand on her cheek. "You see?" she cried to Alex. "She's insane with jealousy." Lucy didn't flinch. "The only wicked person here is you. You tried to harm an innocent child on your own wedding day." The room erupted in murmurs. Doubt spread like fire. Ava froze. Her fake composure began to crack. Alex stood motionless, torn between disbelief and dawning horror. "Lucy, calm down," he whispered, but his voice was uncertain. Ava's mask crumbled further. "This is slander," she cried. "Someone planted that note to ruin our wedding." Before she could say more, a trembling voice broke through the tension. "It wasn't Ava who gave the paper to the waiter," said Gloria, Ava's younger sister, tears streaming down her face. "She told me to give it to him. I swear I didn't know what it said." A collective gasp filled the ballroom. Ava turned on her sister, enraged. "Shut up, Gloria! How dare you lie about me?" But Gloria only sobbed harder. "I'm not lying. I just did what you asked." Her words struck like a dagger, and silence fell once more. Lucy spoke coldly. "If you keep denying it, we can check the security cameras. Everything will be clear in a moment." Ava's face went pale. Her lips trembled. Her eyes darted toward the exits, searching for escape. But there was none. That silence was her confession.